Today I'm going to show you exactly how to build this Gothic church in ARK Survival Ascended using the Gothic Craft Structure Skins, which is a premium cosmetic but definitely well worth it for if you like to do Gothic and medieval themed builds, because there's an amazing amount of details to these skins that just really help build in this style, and especially for these churches with these amazing buttresses. Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial on my channel. As always, I'll show you step by step how to build this base, which will be a great addition if you're working on your own Gothic or medieval town, but it definitely does rely on these skins very heavily, so I'm not quite sure what it would look like without the skins. Probably not as well. But as always, if you enjoy seeing these types of build tutorials and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, it really helps me out a lot, and of course feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you'd really like to see down in the comments below. So this is the entire foundation that you'll need, and now I'll show you exactly how to place it one by one. So we want to start out these foundations by building a 4 wide line. This is going to be the front entrance, and then on the side we want to add 3 foundations here and 3 foundations like that, and we can actually turn that into a 3 by 3 tower on both ends, which are going to be the nice towers at both sides of the entrance. Then here from the middle of the tower, we want to continue sideways by 3 more. Of course, we can do this for both sides of the building. And then from here, what we want to do is make sure that we stick it out by 2 more foundations. And of course, we'll do that on both sides of the building. So the exact same thing everywhere. And then we can go across until this is 4 wide here on the entrance, and then also bring it back into the building just the same. We can do exactly the same thing on this side. There we go. And then from this corner we want to connect 3 more foundations and the same thing right there, of course, to make for the main shape of the church. And then here at the very end, we can just connect these 2 sides to each other. We can then take out our triangles. Now we're going to count the ones on the outside. So this is 1, that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's how far we want to bring this out. And then of course the exact same thing here on the opposite side of the building. And we can connect them here at the very end, which also means that we can start filling in the entire shape now of our foundation, so that we'll have all of the support that we need, and we'll have the main shape for now. We do need to make a few minor additions, but we'll do that once we've filled in this entire shape so far. But yeah, this is a pretty decently sized building. It's nothing too major, like it's not a crazy big building, but a decently sized church, which is going to be a nice addition if you're building a Gothic town. Or if you just want a church base, this will definitely serve you well. So yeah, we just want to go around and fill in all of this. And then we want to take out our foundations again. We actually want to place one here and there, and we can remove this one. So we just want to have the loose foundation there on the corner. The same thing over here, which is going to be the towers, well, kind of on both sides of these entrances. So we'll just have the full foundations in place there. There we go. So once we've done that, we should have this as a foundation, which, I mean, it might look a little bit strange, but it's the shape that we'll need for our build. And now, before we do anything else, we want, of course, add in some stairs here at the front entrance so that we can enter the church from there. And we can also add some here at the side. So just like this, we want to have a staircase, and then on the opposite side we can add the same thing in right there. And then it's time to start the main building. So we want to start right over here with a large wall. We'll do the same thing here at this very end, then 1 right here in the middle, 2 right here on the corners, another one there in the middle, and we can repeat the same pattern. So 1 on that end and 1 right over here, which will help shape up the main hall of the church. And then what we want to do is take out our quarter walls. We want to have 4 of them right over here, another 4 of them right there, and then the same thing will go next to most of these large walls. So we just want to fill in these sections like this, just so that we create a bit of space for our beautiful big windows. We also want to have our slope walls right underneath this. There we go. And then we want to do the same thing over here, just making sure that we have all of our slope walls in the right spots. There we go. Just continue over here and just round it off all the way. So now we have the shapes for all of our windows, or big windows, for the main hall in place. So first of all, we'll take out our normal Gothic castle skins and we'll do these quarter walls just to make sure they blend in nicely with these lovely stone textures. So we want to go around and do it for all of these quarter walls first. There we go. Then we want to take out our trim skins and we want to do that for the next part over here. So we want to go around and add those in for those slope walls everywhere to create these curves. And then we also want to take out the trim skin and place them on the large wall, which will give you these beautiful buttresses, which are great supports to get that church feel going. It's a little bit of a cheat, and if you want to, you can even change the size of these. Now, I use a mod called the variant cycle tool to speed up changing variants, but of course you can just use the menu and change the variant in here. But you will see there's different sizes that you can use, so you can make them bigger. If you wanted to, you can make them giant. Probably not great for this build. And I think there's one more, again, probably not suited for this size of a church. But I want to change the variant at least once, because then we have this little spike that sticks out on the top, which I quite like. So we're just going to go around the entire building and add those in. We also want to make sure that we make these arches a little bit bigger. So we're also going to go around and change the variants on those so that we can have these arches fit in a bit more with the coming windows. So we'll just have to go around and see if we can do all of this. There we go. And then the final few, and there we are. We should have done them all. And now what we should be able to do is add in our gateways. I like to flip them around for the best effect. So we'll add them in all around the building where we've created these arches. So just not on the back there. And we can fill in a few of these gateways. And then of course the gates inside of them, so that we can start creating these beautiful windows. We want to take out our trim skin again, and we can add them to those gate frames as well as the gates themselves to really transform the look of these to these beautiful windows. And then there's a few variants that you can play around with. For the stained glass, you have some options, so whatever you prefer. And even for the gateway, you can make sure that you have these nice additions. Of course, this one looks very nice, but you can even have them with some spikes if you want to. So you can kind of pick your favorite and pick your favorite types of glass. At least for now, I'm going to just change the glass because I feel like the stained glass is the very least that we want to see here. But yeah, the gate frames, you can pick your favorite version and change it into that. I'm not entirely sure if you can do this on official, because technically I guess the slope wall might be clipping into the gateway. If so, there's one version that doesn't require any clipping and you can remove the quarter walls. You can just only have slope walls above it and that should fit the gaps. But I can't really test that. I'm not entirely sure what official would or would not allow. Then we still have a pretty big gap here at the end of the building. So what we want to do is take out our window frames just like this. Then of course fill them in with the actual windows themselves too. And we can then add in our skins. Of course we can change all of those to be stained glass as well, because we definitely want to keep that going. So we want to change the variant of those until we have that nice stained glass, and then we can change the variant of the actual window so that we can get these beautiful big windows, and we can have a central window all the way at the back of the church so that you can still enjoy the views of your surroundings. So yeah, we just want to change the variants until we get the right one. So yeah, we have that tall window in the back, and then all of the other windows along the side of the church itself. Then we're moving into the entrance here. We want to start by having 2 large walls off to each sides and some slope walls here at the very top of it. Then we can actually continue these windows. We want to have 4 of them right here in the middle, of course, adding in the windows themselves. Then what we want to do is 2 normal walls here, 2 normal walls there. We want to take out our quarter walls again and have 2 of them here and 2 of them there. We can have a window in the middle and of course fill in the actual window itself too. Then we can have some slope walls creating this shape for the building, and we can have some railings on top of these 2. Looks a little bit strange now, but I promise it's gonna look very nice in the end. We also want to make sure that we add in a gateway and of course a gate so that we have a proper entrance going here. Now we want to transfer these large walls, and we also want to add a trim skin here on these slope walls. We can change the variants until it becomes these bigger arches, so they go down a little bit further. Then of course we can use the Gothic Castle skins again on the entrance to get a nice entrance. You can change the variants if you really want to, but I think this one, the default one, is the nicest. And we probably can have some nice decorations, so either some torches or just some gargoyles or even some flags, whatever you want. There's a few nice versions for you to pick from. And then here above that, we just want to kind of change these skins like so. And then of course we can also change all of these window skins, the quarter ones, all the way, just not the top just yet. These windows, of course, we can once again turn into stained glass windows, so they fit the church aesthetic. So we want to go ahead and do that all around here. Change them all. We can change this window into the nice round version, and then these windows we want to make into some narrower windows. So I probably would go for this one, or you can go for the double one, whatever you prefer. But we just want to turn them into windows like this at the very least. So whether you want to keep them narrow or you want to have the wider windows, as long as you make these tall windows, it is totally fine. And that already forms a pretty nice looking entrance here. Then what we want to do is take out the trim skins, add them here, as well as on those railings. We then also want to change the variant over here so that we can make this a little bit taller. And then here, to kind of make these ends a little bit nicer, we want to take out our half pillars. We can add 2 here and 2 there. And then you want to use the Gothic Deco skin on them for the best look. And that kind of gives us an entrance to the church over here. For the side entrances, we're going to start out with adding some large walls on the very corners. So we're going to do that, of course, on both sides of the building. Then above those large walls, we actually want to go straight into some slope walls that go into the building, but we also want to make sure that we have some slope walls right next to or between those large walls so that we can shape up where the gate is going to be. Then above those, we want to have some quarter walls right there. Of course, we can do exactly the same on both sides of the buildings. Then a window right there in the middle. Of course, we want to fill in the actual window too, and we can have our slope walls continue to meet in the middle there. Then of course we can add in our gateways as a nice entrance on both sides, and of course our actual gates themselves at the same time. Then we want to take out our trim skins. We want to definitely add them here above the entrance, and we want to make sure that we make these a little bit bigger so that we fill in the gap between the gate and the rest of the building. So yeah, now we can just change the skins for these entrances. And of course, just as with the main entrance, you can of course pick a version that you like the most, with the torches or the gargoyles or the flags, whatever you prefer. You can even mix and match whatever you want. We want to change, of course, these large walls. We also want to change those, and all the way except for the very, very top. So we can do the same thing over here on the other side, of course. And then once again, we can make sure that we have our stained glass in there. We also want to make sure that we have that nice round window above the entrance. So we're going to do the same thing here. And then, of course, we also want to make sure to have these railings on top of those slope walls. And then finally, we can do these two half pillars here with the deco skins again. And then take out the trim skins for the remaining pieces here. And of course, this final bit, we want to make sure that we go for the full ones. You can also go for the version with the gargoyle if you like. Let's do the same thing on the other side, of course. Don't forget about these little pillars either. And then, of course, change the versions on these to make it a little bit taller. So those are the side entrances, but of course, there's some pretty major gaps still between the main hall and the side entrances. So what we want to do is raise up all quarter walls between them so that we have them until the right height. And the exact same thing, of course, for all sides. So we're going to have them 2 on this side and then 2 on the opposite side as well, just so that we can create some nice entrances into the church without having these gaping holes on the side walls. So yeah, we want to just continue to fill these in with all quarter pieces so that we can have some nice central windows for all of these sides. So we want to take out a window wall, and we should be able to fill it in from top to bottom or bottom to top, so that we can create some more lovely windows for our church. So yeah, first of all, we just want to keep these going. And of course, we can take out our windows and add them in along the side here for all of them. And then obviously, we're going to skin this entire wall. You're going to want to change the variant to the stained glass to match the rest of the aesthetic, of course. And then we're going to turn these windows in one big window in a moment. But for now, we're just going to change all of the skins, of course, so they blend in with our Gothic aesthetic. So we want to do that on the opposite side too. So we're just going to change all of these skins to these nicer textures. There we go. Almost there. And then once we've done that, of course, we want to change these windows into some nice tall windows. I'm just going to do one of them. So yeah, you want to have that at the bottom. And then we want to just build this up to the top. So we just want to keep this going. And of course, change the inside to the stained glass version, so that you have, again, some nice tall windows on all sides. So that's what we want. And then change everything to the stained glass. Okay, and then for these side entrances, what we want to do is raise up these pillars to be 6 high in total. So for each of these corners, we just want to make sure that we raise them up. There we go. So we just want to make sure that we get these outlines for the towers in place. And then, of course, we kind of want to make sure that we connect them at the bottom, just so that they're not kind of floating pillars. And then on the other side, of course, we can do exactly the same thing. Make sure that we raise up these pillars by 6. There we go, for all of those corners. And once again, we want to make sure we connect them all the way to the bottom so they look a little bit nicer. And once again, we can do the exact same thing here on the opposite side, of course. So over here as well, we want to make sure that we raise up these pillars by 6 to frame the towers alongside the side entrances. So we can just expand those pillars a little bit and then keep them going here, which will help frame us a nice tower. So just a few more to go here. There we go. And of course, expand them down into the ground. Perfect. Then for the first 3 layers of the walls, we're just going to fill them in like normal. So very easy going to begin with. And we just want to do that for all of those sides. And then above that, we're actually going to flip around the layer. So we're just going to flip these around for all of the different sides. And then we can, of course, do this once more on the opposite side of the building. So just 3 normal walls to begin with. And then the next layer, we want to flip those walls around. And we can do that for all of these little towers that we've made. So again, flip them around here, all around the place. And we also want to take out a ceiling and add them here at the very top of the tower. We're going to do this early so that you can still reach the bottom of the ceiling before we fill everything else in. So for now, we just want to make sure that we add those, and then temporarily we want to have a pillar at the bottom of each of these towers. So just like this, we want to make sure that we have those pillars there. Then we can take out our artifact pedestals and make sure that we add them here on the top. The reason why we add the pillar below is that now it will snap right into the middle of these ceilings, and once you've placed it, we can remove those temporary pillars. But now at least we know that the artifact pedestal is perfectly central, which is exactly what we wanted and needed. Now what we want to do is take out our stone walls again. We want to change them to those window versions and add another layer of them around this tower. There we go. And obviously we're going to want to do this everywhere. So just making sure that we fill in the sides of these towers everywhere. And then of course we can take out our actual window and make sure that we fill this in on all sides at the same time. So right over here as well. And right here too. There we go. And once we've done that, we can take out our normal walls again, flip them around once more, and fill in those remaining sides of the tower before we start skinning them all to reveal what this actually looks like, because I fully understand that you might think I've gone crazy. This doesn't look like anything, but I promise the results going to be worth it. So we just want to fill in these final pieces like this. Okay, so first of all, the pillars, and well, you're free to change these pillars if you maybe want to go for some of the rounder versions or whatever you prefer, but we definitely want to skin these pillars to look a whole lot nicer, of course. So first of all, we'll do that so that the corner of the towers at least will look great, and we can do that for all of these different towers, of course. For the video, I'm just going to skin these towers. Of course, you're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side, but it just will save us some time. The first 4 layers, we can all change the skins to the normal stone texture. So the Gothic castle skins, which will give us these lovely stone walls. Then, however, we can change the variance here. So the top one, we want to change the variance once so that we get a little layer going across there with some of these additional details, which will just add a bunch of character. And if you want, you can add some extra gargoyles by adding a trophy shield to the wall and use the deco skin on them. Then we want to take out these courtyard stone skins, and we can change the windows that we added, which will give them a slightly different texture to the main building. So we want to do that to all of these to just kind of set them apart a little bit. And then we want to change the window itself to one of these stone textures. There's two versions for those, so you can pick whatever one you like most, but this will just provide us with some more details for these lovely walls. And then the top one, again, we can change to the castle, the Gothic castle skin. And then once again, we can change the variant so that we get that little beam going across the top layer, just to make it look a little bit nicer everywhere. Then we want to take out the deco skin, and first of all we want to skin the ceiling, which will turn it into a little tower like this, which instantly looks a lot nicer, of course. And then we can also use the deco skin on the artifact pedestal to change them into this. But we can actually change the variants again so that we can go for something a little bit nicer. There's quite a few options that you could use for these, but the one I would probably go for is these towers like this, which adds a little bit of those nice spiky roofs to your build, which really helps the Gothic architecture. So I think these one for all of the side entrances is very, very fitting. Then we can take out the large walls again, and for these towers we want to start by having these large walls all around the corner of the builds, and then here on the inside we can also have them facing the entrance, since we're not gonna do anything over there, so we can fill those in. And then all of the corners of these towers, just to get things started. Then we also want to flip around a layer of walls here and go all the way across the building to shape up these towers a little bit more. So we're going to do the exact same thing over here. Flip those walls around on this layer above the large walls. There we go. Then we can just fill in the bottom layer here on the outside. So the two walls facing the outside, we just want to fill in the bottom layer. And we want to add the double door on the inside layer so that we can access it from the church itself. It kind of forms a nice entrance, and then we can fill in the remaining part of the wall on the outside just like this. We can take out our window walls here and fill in 3 of them above each other in the gaps that we've got remaining. So just like this, we'll fill in the gaps. And then finally, we can also add in the pillars on the corner of the building. And then even here on the inside, we want to make sure that we add in that pillar. And of course, also here on the front, on the outside, the opposite corner. And we want to do the same thing for the other tower. So we can just raise up these pillars like this. And of course, also have the one here on the inside. And then finally, we of course want to fill in the windows themselves so they can be nice stained glass windows. And if you want to, you can of course add in some doors so you can block off the towers whenever you feel like it. And then what we also want to do is add a beam at the bottom of all of these windows as just an extra bit of details. Then we actually want to skin a lot of this. I'm going to do this for one tower just to save some time again. So of course we want to skin everything into these castle skins, including the windows. The windows, of course, we want to change to the stained glass and then make one big tall window out of all of these by changing the variants. I'm not going to do that again. We've done that plenty of time now. But yeah, basically you want to have the big window. Kind of like we had at the back there. For the rest, we can just change all of this except for the beam into these castle skins to get the right look here. So we want to just go around and change all of those skins right away, including all of these pillars, of course, to get the right look. Then for the entrance here on the inside, I personally like the curved one a little bit better for these kind of doors. I think that works with the aesthetic a bit more. And then the top one, we also want to change the variant so that we get this little ledge around the top area. And then once, of course, you've changed the windows, we almost have everything looking nice. We just want to take out our deco skin on those beams, which adds a little bit of an extra detail at the bottom of the windows. So then we're going to take out our window walls again. We're going to add them on the corner of the building, so all the way round. We just want to add an extra layer where we have these windows right on the corner, and we're going to do that for the entire tower, so also the one facing inwards. And then in between we can just have a regular wall to fill in the gaps everywhere. So we want to go around, do this everywhere, and of course also fill in the actual windows themselves. So we can do the same over here. Go around, fill them all in. And then once again, I'll show you how to skin it over here on this layer. We can go all the way around. There we go. And we can, of course, change these versions again so they are the stone ones, so that we just have a little bit of extra details going around on our tower. Okay, so for the next part, you have two options. You've got the what's possible on official and what would be what I did originally. So on official, what you want to do, you want to fill in these corners with 2/4 ceilings. You want to do the exact same thing here on the other side. And then what we want to do is have 2 ceilings here and 2 ceilings there. And then the rest of the building, we can just fill in like normal. If you want to have a way up here, I probably would then make a ladder down here so that you can still get up to the top. You can also add a staircase if you want, but it will take a lot of space to get all the way there, of course. So this might be a little bit more convenient. And this way, what we can do is have a window over here and another window right over there. As you can see, that just here gives you 2 windows. The reason we can't do 4 of them is because you would need to overlap. So if you're not on official and you do have clipping possible, what you want to do is have these 1/4 ceilings right in the corners of the entire building. Then we want to take out our ceilings. We want to add 2 of them right here. We can add another 2 right there, and we can keep that going for all of the different sides. This way you can actually add in these windows on all sides of the tower. So again, depends on what settings you're playing on, what you would be able to do. The only downside to this way is that, well, it gets pretty tricky trying to fit in a hatch frame because of the snap points that we now have. So it becomes a little bit more difficult to actually get a ladder up here. You could have one right in the middle, of course, if you don't add a ceiling. So yeah, you can choose which one you would prefer. For now, for the tutorial, we're gonna stick with the official way of doing things, just so that everyone should be able to follow along. But in theory, all you would need to do to have the windows on all sides, of course, build the same kind of walls on all sides instead of what we're gonna do right now to make this fit in. So it's just a small difference in the amount of windows that you can have versus just having these 2, which I think is totally fine. So there we go. That would be the official way of doing things. And then of course we want to fill in the sides over here with some 1/4 walls, just so that we have the entire front and back of this tower completed with those windows in the middle. And of course we're going to do the same thing on this side, just filling in those quarter pieces all the way along to the top of the window. There we go. Don't need that one. And of course, we can also actually fill in the gates over here. I didn't do that just yet. We can also take out our pillar and actually raise these up to be one higher than the current gates and walls we've placed. So we just want to raise these up by one. Don't need that one. And of course, we can do that for all sides of the tower. So we want to also do that here on the inside, raising up these towers a little bit more. There we go. And we want to just keep this going all the way around the building. Very nice. Then for the top layer here, we want to flip around these walls. We want to just fill in the top layer. We can do this all the way around, of course. For these sides, we want to do the exact same thing so that we can build the top of the tower. There we go. Then for these side walls, we can of course still add some windows, just not with the gates. Here on the inside, I would probably just fill it all in, but you could still have a window here if you really wanted to, because technically the roof is going to be in between these, so you would still have a little bit of a view. So we want to first of all just add these walls to the side of it, and then we can have our windows right here so that we can create these tall windows again that we've already created a few times by now. If you still want to be able to enjoy your views and get some light in there. So for now, we'll take out our windows, fill those in on all the different sides. There we go. So those towers are definitely taking shape now. And then once again, I'll skin this side first, or only this side. We want to, of course, start with just the pillars, making sure that we raise them up all the way to the top here with those Gothic castle skins. We can then take out our trim skins and, of course, skin the gate and the gateway. And then we actually want to change this to the version that blends in with the wall perfectly. The easiest one. Of course, you can change the gate into the stained glass. But yeah, we definitely want to go for the one that blends in perfectly into the wall. We can change our quarter walls so that this all fits together perfectly. And we can change the top of these walls. For the sides, of course, we can change all of this. And then for the windows, we want to make the tall window that we already made a few times. For the rest, we can just keep switching all these skins out to those nice Gothic textures. So we want to keep doing that everywhere. And then for the very top layer, of course, we're gonna change the variant so that we have a nice trim going on there, which already gets you a quite nice looking tower, especially with this adding some 3D effects. If you want to add an additional detail underneath these windows, if you've used these, especially here on the outside, we can add in the beam and add the deco skin on them, just as we did at the bottom. Then for the corners, we're going to add in 4 ceilings, just like this, which will have to add in some details for the roof. So for now, we just want to make sure we add those, and temporarily we want to have a pillar at the very bottom of these once again, so that we'll be able to snap some artifact pedestals to them. So if we take out the pedestal, we should be able to snap these in all around our building now in the exact middle. And of course, then we can take out these pillars because they would look a little bit strange if we keep them. So yeah, you want to take those out. There we go. And then for these ceilings themselves, if you want to blend them in a little bit nicer, you can use the trim skin if you want to, because if you change them to the right variant, they will blend in very nicely to the corners here and giving you some nice shapes over there. But more importantly, we want to change the artifact pedestals to those deco skins. And then we want to change the version of it until we get the one with the nice gargoyle. So these ones. And we want to add those corner pieces to all corners of the two towers. So we want to do the same thing for both towers, obviously. I'm just going to show it for one. I messed up the variant here. There we go. And do the exact same thing for all of them. Then the next step is actually to have a roof piece in between all of these. So we want to just add those in on all different sides. We can actually skin these as well to get these nice textures. And we want to change the variant until we get these nice rooftops. You can choose your own variant, but I would go for one of the bigger ones. There's two versions of them, but they just add some extra nice details. If you don't like the skulls for your church, you can of course change to the gargoyle version. Fits a little bit better maybe, and it looks quite nice. As you can see, it already gets a pretty nice detailed roof here. But to really blend it all together, we want to add in some corner roof pieces. Now it looks like we're overlapping them, but we're not really, because remember those big statues on the corner, it's just the artifact pedestal there. So this should not interfere with anything, and you should just be able to snap them in there. And now that we have them, we can change them to the roof skins so that we have a little bit of the roof textures poking through around those corners, which just kind of blend the roof together in a very nice way, in my opinion. Then we're not quite done yet. We want to place down a ceiling right here. We can just change the textures of that. We can have some pillars right there on the corners. Also change those textures. And then we can have some more walls going around the outside. So we just want to fill those all in. Change the variance on them. We can of course get that nice little bit of texture going just to kind of raise up the next layer. Before we do anything else, we want to place a pillar down in the middle, and then we can have another ceiling on top of that. The ceiling we want to skin with the deco skin so that we get those battlements on there, which looks quite nice. And then at the very, very top, we want to place down or snap another artifact pedestal. Change it with the deco skin. Now this one we're actually going to scale up a little bit, so we're going to make it 1.5 in total before we change the variance until we have a nice top for this tower. So we want to go for this one, so the very big one, and you can see this way we can make a quite nice and steep looking tower for the entrance here of our church. And of course, the other side, we're going to repeat the process. I'm not going to skin this, so it's going to be a little bit easier to see exactly what we've done. So of course, we'll add in these roof pieces. Then we want to add in these roof corners so that we can kind of complete this layer of the building in an easy way. Then we want to add a ceiling there in the middle with all pillars on the corners as well as in the middle of this thing. We then want to add in our walls all the way around. We want to add in another pillar, and on top of there we want to have another pedestal. So it looks very weird without the Gothic skins, obviously, but when you skin it all and you put it all together, you can see you'll get an amazing looking entrance here. Now that we've done all that, we've got our entrances complete, and all that remains to be done is make sure that we actually have a roof for our church itself. So what we want to do is, of course, we want to take out our roof pieces. We want to start right here. We can also go around the corner there and fill in those pieces. Make sure that they tie up together. We'll leave out the corners for now. We can then, of course, also make sure that this goes all the way across from one side to another. There we go. That will line up now. This, of course, again, we'll leave open because we'll need to connect it. This we can bring in all the way to the front and bring this one all the way across until where we'll have to fill in the back. We can of course do the same thing here on the other side, making sure that we start to fill in this entire roof like so, and then just making sure that we get everything lined up here. So the top 2 layers, of course, we can just kind of bring across all the way to the front of our church right over here. We can just follow along the side of this tower, and then at the side entrance we just want to make sure that we meet up with the main roof. We can take out our corner pieces, make sure that we blend together these roofs in a satisfying way. There we go. And we can do that everywhere along the roof of the church. We can see that we have the main shape ready. Now I do like to add a little bit of extra details on the top of the roofs here. So we want to have our railings going all the way across. First of all, on these side bits, we'll add them going from the start to the end. And we'll do the same thing here on the top layer. So we just want to make sure we have these railings going all the way across to the end. And then of course you would want to change all of these variants. What you want to do is take out your trim skin, and then we want to actually change the variant until we get the nice top of the roofs. If you want, you can even change the materials. So for example, if you want to go from iron to some brass, you can see you get some nice brass details in there. That's up to you, of course, but you want to do that for all the railings along the top of the roof here. Then we want to turn this back into a triangle, and we can start across the bottom here to fill in a layer of the roof. And of course we can just continue this all the way. We're not going to be able to actually perfectly connect this because unfortunately it doesn't perfectly line up with the top. So we want to round this off, and then this piece over here will have to bring out a triangle ceiling just like that. But if you want to kind of fill up this gap, what you can do is try to kind of place a artifact pedestal pretty central there, and then you can add one of these as some nice details. And well, you can pick whatever variant you really like, but this one definitely fills up the spot quite well. And then we can just kind of continue to fill in the rest of this roof quite easily. So we can just follow the rest of the shape so that we get this church all built up. There we go. Just follow along the edges. For the roof itself, of course, it's just changing the skins, as simple as that, to get a really nice looking roof for your church. Then, of course, we can do a few extra things here on the inside of the church. What we want to do first of all is take some large walls, place them right over here along the side entrances, and we can also make sure that we add in our gateway so that we kind of create like a nice gateway or like a archway into the sides of the building. We want to also add in our slope walls up there just to kind of separate this from the main hall a little bit. And the best way I found to do that is add some quarter walls here, and then we just want to take out our window wall and add that right there in the middle. Then of course what we want to do is add our trim skins here on these sloped pieces, just making sure that we pick the right variant that makes it a little bit steeper. There we go. And then once again we can just kind of change these versions all to the Gothic castle skins so that we get these nice stone textures all around. And of course the gate itself as well. And then these windows we want to change to the round version. I don't think you actually need stained glass in here. You could, of course, if you wanted to, but that kind of just blends it all together a little bit better. Then there's a few extra things that we can do to add even more details. So alongside of where we have these beautiful windows, what we can do is add in a few extra supports. So basically just going from one end all the way to the other to really add in those supports for the church, just to make it look a little bit nicer and detailed. If you're going to use this as a base, you might want to add in another layer, but if you're going to use this as a church, this is probably more appropriate, so you can appreciate the size of the build a little bit better. But yeah, you want to have a few extra details like this to make it a little bit more special. So yeah, we just want to make sure that these slope walls go around the build like this. And then of course we kind of want to have some pillars to line up with that, so we want to bring up these pillars like so they meet up with those supports that we have, which will also help form the church a little bit, like give it a little bit more character and detail everywhere. So first of all, we'll add in these pillars in those specific locations, just like this, and then we can actually add another one right here in the middle. This one goes a little bit higher, of course, but it keeps with the pattern of those pillars. And just as an example of what you would want to skin this as is you use the castle Gothic castle skins again for the top of these slope walls. Then you would take out your trim skin next and you would add them on the bottom ones of these, just to make them look a little bit nicer. And we can also use them on these pillars. We can of course add in some little gargoyles to all of these if you want to add some details, and the bottom ones I would turn into these bigger curves, just so that you can add some additional details. For these pillars, there's also a few variants that you could work with. This bottom one being one of them. Then you have the middle one that you could use after it. And then of course there's also a top version, so you can make them very seamlessly as pillars. And that's just an idea of how you could do the interior if you want to turn this into a proper church. If you want to of course use it as a base, you probably want to decorate it a little bit differently. But with that, you do get a full-on church that fits these Gothic cosmetics quite well and will be a great addition to your own Gothic or medieval town, or a nice church-themed base. So for a quick overlook what it looked like in my Gothic town, you can see it right here. It's a little bit different in some places because of the overlapping, but the majority of it is exactly what we've just built. Yeah, just adds a nice sideline for your town project. You can add a little cemetery next to it, of course. There's some really nice gravestone skins in these Gothic craft structures at the same time. So yeah, you can really make something very nice once it's fully skinned, etc. Looks pretty awesome. You can go crazy on the floors as well, adding these carpets or these shiny marble floors. As you can see, you get a pretty nice effect, especially if you decorate it completely. There we go. That is how you build a Gothic themed church in ARK Survival Ascended using the Gothic Craft custom cosmetic skins. As always, if you enjoy seeing these types of build tutorials and you want to continue to see more, make sure you like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave your suggestions for future videos of builds you'd like to see down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video or the next stream. For now, goodbye.